Welcome the Lord's chosen. People don't fear what is loud. They fear what they can't read. That's the part nobody admits out loud. The real discomfort doesn't come from aggression, threats, or bravado. It comes from unpredictability wrapped in calm. When someone can't tell whether you're observing, calculating, or simply unimpressed, their nervous system goes to work for them. Suspicion fills in the blanks. Stories get written without your consent. Here's a fact that quietly explains a lot. Studies in behavioral psychology show that the human brain is far more stressed by uncertain intent than by clear hostility. When danger is obvious, the mind adapts. When intent is unclear, the brain stays on high alert. That's why people relax around loud egos but tense up around composed individuals who don't overshare, don't rush, and don't explain themselves unnecessarily. Now add a little humor to that truth. You could be sitting there doing absolutely nothing, thinking about lunch, wondering why your phone battery drains so fast, and somehow people are convinced you're up to something. Not because you said anything strange, not because you acted suspicious, but because you didn't give them access to your internal dashboard. No emotional subtitles, no running commentary, just presence. That's where the unease starts. People are used to reading others through habits. Oversharing, nervous laughter, forced friendliness, emotional leakage. When those signals don't show up, they don't assume neutrality. They assume strategy. The calm gets misread as calculation. The restraint gets labeled as control. Suddenly, you're not just a person anymore. You're a variable. And when humans encounter a variable they can't solve, they don't stay curious for long. They get spooked. They watch closer. They project meaning where none was offered. They start treating you like someone who knows how to play the room without touching the board. That's when the whispers start, the sideways glances, the quiet respect mixed with discomfort. This isn't about intimidation. It's about presence that disrupts predictability. It's about how some people don't charm by talking, but by not needing to. And once that realization hits, people don't just notice you anymore. They feel something brewing, whether you intended it or not. Number one, you don't rush outcomes, and that unsettles people. Most people are in a hurry to close the loop. They want answers fast, reactions fast, wins fast. Speed gives them relief. It makes them feel in control. When you don't share that urgency, it quietly disrupts the entire dynamic. You're not slow, you're not confused, and you're not lazy. You simply don't let pressure dictate your timing. That difference is small on the surface, but psychologically, it's massive. People reveal who they are when they want something badly. They over-explain, over-promise, overreact. You don't do that. You let situations breathe. You let people talk themselves into corners. You let events mature before you touch them. To someone who relies on force, charm, or manipulation, this feels like walking into fog. They can't tell if you're waiting, watching, or already decided. What really unsettles them is that your patience isn't passive. It's active restraint. You're choosing not to move yet. That choice signals confidence without announcing it. It suggests you don't need quick validation, quick approval, or quick victories. And that threatens people who build their power on urgency. They depend on momentum because if things slow down, their leverage disappears. There's also something quietly exposing about your approach. When you don't rush outcomes, you allow patterns to surface. Inconsistencies show up. Motives leak out. People get sloppy when they think time is on their side, and nervous when they realize it isn't. They start wondering what you've noticed. That's when discomfort creeps in. You also don't panic when things don't go your way immediately. You don't scramble to fix optics or control narratives. That calm response tells others you're playing a longer game than they are. It makes them feel short-sighted, even if they can't explain why. Nobody likes feeling like they're reacting while someone else is positioning. In a world addicted to speed, patience looks suspicious. It gets misread as calculation, even when it's just clarity. People feel something brewing because they sense you're not moved by the same triggers they are. You're not chasing the moment. You're letting the moment come to you. And that quiet refusal to rush makes people uneasy because it suggests you don't fear where things are headed. Number 2, you study reactions, not words. Most people listen just long enough to respond. They collect sentences, not signals. You do the opposite. You pay attention to what happens around the words, the shifts in tone, the timing, the tension that shows up when someone is cornered. That habit alone separates you from the crowd, and people can feel it even if they can't explain it. Words are cheap and rehearsed. Reactions aren't. A reaction slips out before the mask is adjusted. It shows up when someone is challenged, ignored, delayed, or told no. You notice who stays steady and who suddenly changes character, who gets louder, who gets defensive, who starts joking when things turn serious. These aren't accidents, they're tells, and you clock them quietly. What unsettles people is that you don't reward good talk. You don't get hypnotized by confidence or charisma. Someone can sound impressive and still lose credibility with you if their behavior doesn't match. Over time, people realize they can't talk their way past you. They sense that convincing you requires consistency, not performance. You also don't correct people when they expose themselves. You let them finish. You let them explain. You let them contradict themselves. That silence isn't approval, it's observation. And deep down, people feel it. They feel like they're being read, not judged, which is far more uncomfortable. This way of listening changes power dynamics. In most conversations, power goes to the person who speaks best. With you, power shifts to the person who remains aware. You don't rush to respond because you're processing more than just meaning. You're tracking intent. That makes people nervous, because intent is harder to defend than words. Over time, your reputation forms without you saying a thing. People start choosing their reactions more carefully around you. Some become guarded. Others overcompensate. A few become transparent by accident. None of them feel neutral. They sense that once they show you how they move under pressure, they can't take it back. You don't collect information to use it against people. You collect it to understand reality. But understanding reality gives you leverage whether you want it or not. That's why people feel spooked. They know words can be edited, reactions can't, and they know you're watching the part of them that usually goes unseen. Number 3, you're comfortable letting others underestimate you. Most people fight hard to be seen correctly. They explain themselves, defend their intelligence, highlight their strengths, and rush to correct any wrong assumption. You don't. And that choice alone throws people off balance. When someone underestimates you and you don't rush to fix it, it creates a strange tension. They expect resistance. They get none. You understand something many people never learn. Being underestimated is a position of advantage. When expectations are low, pressure disappears. People relax. They speak freely. They stop guarding their moves. You're given front row access to how they really operate, all because they think they've already figured you out. What unsettles people later is the gap between who they assumed you were and how you actually move. You don't announce growth. You don't reveal depth up front. You let time do the revealing. When your actions quietly contradict their assumptions, it forces them to revisit their own judgment. That moment is uncomfortable. It bruises ego. You also don't need external validation to function. If someone thinks you're simple, quiet, slow, or harmless, you let them. Your sense of self doesn't depend on applause or recognition. That emotional independence is rare, and people feel it. They're used to others needing to be seen. You don't. There's also discipline in your restraint. You know that correcting every misconception is exhausting and pointless. Most opinions aren't built on truth. They're built on convenience. You save your energy for results, not explanations. Over time, people realize you didn't rise suddenly. You were always capable. You just didn't advertise it. This approach exposes something in others. Some feel embarrassed when they realize they misjudged you. Others feel threatened. A few feel foolish. But almost everyone feels unsettled because they can't tell how much you're holding back. If you were underestimated once, could you be underestimated again? You're not playing small. You're playing quiet. You let people feel safe while you stay observant and grounded. And when it finally becomes clear that you're far more aware and capable than they assumed, the shift is jarring, not because you changed, but because they did. Number 4, you trigger projection in insecure people. People are constantly running from the parts of themselves they don't want to admit. Insecurity, envy, fear, selfishness, these traits live quietly beneath the surface, but the moment someone who's self-assured and aware enters their space, those hidden parts demand attention. You don't cause them to act out. You simply exist, and their minds do the rest. They see your calm, your focus, your patience, and instead of recognizing it as your strength, they unconsciously project their own flaws onto you. Suddenly, you're the schemer, the manipulator, the cold one, not because you are, but because their own discomfort has to find an outlet. This projection is subtle at first. You notice it in sideways comments, in the unnecessary justifications they spill, in the tiny digs that reveal more about them than about you. And the scary part for them is that they can't stop it. Projection doesn't obey logic. You could be doing the simplest thing, smiling, observing, moving through a room, and their mind will rewrite the story to make it about their own inadequacies. That's why people sense a presence they can't name. They feel something brewing, even when nothing is actually happening. You don't react to these projections. You don't defend yourself or try to correct them. That would only confirm their narrative. You stay consistent, grounded, and aware. Their stories crumble slowly because reality doesn't bend to their fear, and they start feeling exposed without realizing why. That discomfort, that unease, is a response to you triggering the parts of them they've been running from. By existing in your own clarity, you become a mirror they weren't ready to face. They interpret that mirror as power, control, or hidden knowledge. The more they project, the more it exposes their instability. They become jittery, cautious, over-explaining, overreacting, and all the while you continue unshaken, letting their insecurities unravel themselves. What feels like tension to them is quiet observation to you, and that difference is what makes your presence feel both magnetic and unsettling, like something is moving beneath the surface, something they can sense but can't name. Number 5, you don't bond through weakness, and that breaks social rules. Most people connect through vulnerability. They swap stories of pain, share fears, and rely on emotional hooks to build closeness. It's the invisible currency of social life. The more you expose your fragility, the more people feel they understand you, and the more power they gain over you in subtle ways. You don't play that game. You don't trade weakness for friendship, sympathy, or acceptance. You engage with people on clarity, consistency, and action, not emotional bargains. That alone makes others uneasy because they instinctively expect the usual rules to apply. By refusing to bond through weakness, you force people to reveal themselves in ways they weren't prepared for. They can't manipulate you through pity or shared struggle. They can't feel superior by pointing out flaws or weaknesses. They have to show up as they are, fully accountable for their actions or risk being exposed. That kind of interaction is rare, and most people aren't equipped to handle it. It feels threatening because it removes their usual safety nets. Your independence in relationships also signals that loyalty and trust aren't automatic. They're earned. You don't lean on others for validation, emotional support, or reassurance, and you don't need constant affirmation. That creates tension for people who are used to controlling connections through dependency. They realize quickly that if they want a place in your circle, they have to engage genuinely, without shortcuts. This approach quietly flips social dynamics. People notice that they can't predict your reactions based on traditional social cues. They can't use their usual tactics to win influence or favor. Your relationships become a reflection of intent and character, not strategy or manipulation. And while some people admire that quietly, many feel exposed, off balance, and unsure of how to act. By refusing to bond through weakness, you redefine interactions without saying a word. People sense a standard they can't bypass, a presence that doesn't rely on emotion to anchor itself. That subtle disruption of expectations creates intrigue, respect, and an unmistakable tension, because it reminds everyone around you that most of what passes for connection is conditional, and you refuse to participate in that pretense. Number 6, you pause before responding, even when attacked. Most people react instantly. An insult, a challenge, or even a simple disagreement triggers a rush of words, explanations, or defensiveness. It's automatic, almost primal, and it creates a predictable rhythm in social interactions. You don't follow that pattern. You pause. You let the words hang. You let the tension sit in the room without rushing to fill it. That pause isn't hesitation. It's observation, calculation, and control all rolled into one. And people notice it immediately, even if they can't explain why it feels off. That brief silence does more than just unsettle. It exposes. When someone expects an immediate reaction and doesn't get one, their own nerves start to show. They overcompensate, stumble, or escalate without realizing it. The dynamic flips. Instead of you reacting to them, they start reacting to you. It's subtle but profoundly effective. People feel a shift in power because the usual script they rely on has been disrupted. Your calm pause forces them into unfamiliar territory, and unfamiliarity is uncomfortable. Pausing before responding also signals confidence. It says that you're not driven by ego, emotion, or the need to prove yourself. You're not scrambling to win or justify your position. Instead, you're observing the bigger picture, weighing intentions, and choosing how, or even if, you want to respond. That kind of measured composure is rare, and people can sense it. It reads as authority, as patience, as someone who operates on a level beyond immediate triggers. What makes this even more unsettling is that your pause gives space for them to reveal themselves. In that silence, their frustration, impatience, or insecurity becomes visible. They can't hide it behind words or charm, and by the time you respond, if you even do, it carries weight, because it comes from control, not reaction. In a world addicted to instant responses, your deliberate pause feels like power. People feel it in their stomachs before their minds catch up. It's quiet, subtle, and unmistakable, and it leaves them wondering not just what you're thinking, but how much you already know. Number 7, you exit situations without burning bridges or begging closure. Most people leave with noise, drama, or explanations. They feel compelled to justify every decision, defend every boundary, and ensure that others understand why they're gone. You don't. You leave clean, quiet, and final. That doesn't mean you're careless or indifferent. It means you understand the value of energy and perception. You know that when a door closes without chaos, the impression lingers far longer than any argument ever could. People notice it immediately, even if they don't fully understand why it unsettles them. Your exits are deliberate. They carry no hidden desperation or emotional bargaining. You don't linger, you don't over-explain, and you don't demand acknowledgement. That makes people nervous because it breaks their sense of control. They're used to drama being a natural part of separation, a tool to manipulate guilt or hold power. When you simply step away, you expose the emptiness of those tactics and leave them facing their own reactions. There's also an elegance to your departures that amplifies your presence. You demonstrate that your focus isn't tied to approval, attachment, or validation. You can disengage from people, projects, or conflicts without leaving a mess. And that signals a level of independence most can't comprehend. It's not apathy, it's intentionality. People feel it as a kind of quiet authority, the unspoken message that you are not held hostage by expectations, emotional hooks, or social games. By leaving this way, you also reveal the true character. Your calm, controlled exit forces reflection without you saying a word. It subtly shifts the energy of the environment, and people sense the difference instantly. In the end, walking away without burning bridges isn't just a strategy, it's a statement. It tells the world you value your peace over validation, your boundaries over approval, and your clarity over chaos. People feel this, and that quiet power lingers long after you've gone, leaving them both intrigued and uneasy, because they sense someone operating on a level of control they haven't yet reached. Number 8, you notice who changes when power shifts. Most people only pay attention to the surface, to what's said, what's shown, and the roles people play when everything is convenient. You don't. You watch how people behave when stakes rise, when control moves, when circumstances tilt in unexpected directions. That's where real character shows itself. You notice who adapts gracefully, who panics, who manipulates, and who quietly tries to reclaim advantage. These small, subtle shifts tell you more than words ever could, and people feel it even before they realize it themselves. Your awareness of these dynamics unsettles others because they assume appearances are enough. They expect their usual persona, charm, or tactics to be sufficient. But you see beyond that. You catch the hesitation in a smile, the micro-tension in a handshake, the subtle recalibration of tone. People sense that you are observing not just their actions, but the undercurrent driving them. They don't like being seen in ways they haven't authorized. What makes this more intimidating is that your observations aren't reactive. You don't call people out immediately. You store the information quietly, letting the patterns reveal themselves fully over time. That creates tension because people know they've been noticed, but they don't know how much you understand. They start second-guessing themselves, questioning their moves, and adjusting behavior in ways that feel unnatural. You've disrupted the invisible rules of social navigation without saying a word. You also don't need to assert dominance to gather insight. Power shifts naturally in any environment, but most people are blind to its true indicators. You are not blind. You track influence, decision-making, and loyalty in real time, and you notice who bends, who breaks, and who stands firm. That awareness gives you a kind of quiet leverage. By recognizing these subtle changes in behavior, you operate on a level others can't see. People feel exposed, uneasy, and cautious around you, because they realize too late that they've revealed more than they intended. Your presence becomes a lens through which true character is magnified, and that makes you both compelling and quietly intimidating, even without a word spoken. Number 9, you don't explain your growth to people who benefit from your old self. Most people feel obligated to justify their changes, to make sure others understand why they've evolved. You don't. You know that growth isn't a performance, and it certainly isn't a gift to those who thrived when you were smaller, quieter, or less capable. You move forward without announcements, without explanations, and without concern for how your evolution disrupts someone else's comfort zone. That deliberate silence unsettles people because they realize too late that you've outgrown the narrative they had about you. People who benefited from your old self, whether it was your patience, compliance, or restraint, feel threatened because they can no longer predict or manipulate your behavior. They thought they understood the rules, the limits, and the roles you played. Your growth breaks that framework. You act from a place of strength and clarity they weren't ready to witness. Their unease grows because your evolution highlights their own stagnation, their reliance on your previous version, and the illusions they built around you. You also refuse to prove your worth through explanations. You don't need validation for what you've accomplished internally or externally. That independence is rare, and it unnerves people who measure relationships through control, expectation, or familiarity. They start to feel that something is brewing, an energy or awareness they can't touch or define, because you've become someone who operates beyond their scripts. Your silence about growth amplifies its impact. Every action, every success, every decision demonstrates the change more powerfully than any words could. People notice the discrepancy between the person they knew and the person you've become, and it forces them to reassess not just you, but themselves. That subtle disruption of expectation creates tension, fascination, and even fear, because your presence now carries proof of what they assumed they could contain or influence, and it reminds them that control was always temporary. By refusing to explain your evolution, you claim space others assumed they owned. They sense a force in you they cannot decode, and that's why your growth doesn't just happen. It resonates, unsettles, and commands silent recognition. Number 10. You're selective with empathy, not endlessly generous. Most people believe empathy means giving endlessly, feeling for everyone, and absorbing the emotional weight of others without boundaries. You don't. You feel, you understand, and you gauge. But you don't indiscriminately hand over your attention or energy. You recognize that empathy is a tool, not a currency to be spent recklessly. That selectivity unsettles people because they can't predict whether they'll get your understanding or your indifference. You decide who deserves access to your emotional space, and that control creates subtle tension. When someone expects sympathy or excuses, they quickly realize you don't hand them out automatically. You assess, you weigh, and you act accordingly. That makes people uneasy because most are used to triggering reactions through guilt, storytelling, or emotional manipulation. With you, that doesn't work. You see through narratives. You respond with clarity, not automatic compassion, which exposes motives that others assume are hidden. Being selective with empathy also signals strength and self-awareness. People sense that your understanding comes from observation, not performance. You're not empathetic to inflate your image or win favor. You're empathetic to see clearly, to understand dynamics, and to act in alignment with reality. That kind of emotional intelligence is rare, and it makes people both curious and cautious. They start second-guessing whether they've revealed too much, whether they've misjudged you, or whether their usual tactics will backfire. At the same time, this approach teaches subtle boundaries without words. People learn quickly that they can't rely on you for unlimited tolerance, justification, or validation. That tension, the fear of pushing too far, the uncertainty of whether you'll engage emotionally, creates a quiet magnetism. They notice your presence, and they feel a mixture of intrigue and unease, because they realize that empathy, which most take for granted, is something you wield deliberately. By being selective, you elevate the value of your attention and the weight of your responses. People sense that interacting with you requires honesty, effort, and respect. That quiet authority, rooted in emotional discernment, is what makes your presence felt and feared without a single showy gesture. Number 11. You can sit in uncertainty without needing reassurance. Most people are terrified of the unknown. They rush to fill gaps, seek validation, and demand answers, because ambiguity triggers discomfort and fear. You don't operate that way. You can exist in uncertainty without flinching, without panicking, and without scrambling for approval. That calm presence in a world obsessed with certainty unsettles people because it exposes their reliance on constant control and reassurance. Sitting in uncertainty doesn't mean you're indecisive. It means you trust your awareness and your ability to navigate situations without needing every variable spelled out. You observe, process, and let information unfold naturally. That patience makes others feel off balance. They expect reactions, explanations, and predictable moves. When you don't deliver them, they start projecting meaning where none exists. Your composure becomes a silent challenge. They feel something brewing, even if nothing has happened yet. People notice when you're unaffected by chaos that would rattle anyone else. They sense that you are not driven by the need to fix, control, or predict outcomes. That makes them wary because they are used to reading others through stress, urgency, or emotional response. You remove that cue. You don't give them the reassurance they unconsciously crave, and that absence is more powerful than any words. This ability also reveals who around you is truly stable and who isn't. Some people get defensive. Others over-explain or try to manipulate situations to force clarity. A few quietly adapt, realizing your calm is intentional, not ignorance. That dynamic alone shifts the energy of any room or relationship. People sense that uncertainty, which normally terrifies them, has no grip on you. By being comfortable in ambiguity, you create a presence that is both magnetic and disorienting. Your calm signals confidence, control, and foresight. People feel it instinctively. They can't rush you, predict you, or unsettle you with their usual tactics. And that silent mastery of uncertainty makes others both respect you and fear misreading you, because they know you operate on a level of patience and perception they haven't yet reached. Number 12. You don't flinch when people reveal their worst sides. Most people recoil when confronted with cruelty, envy, betrayal, or anger. They respond with defensiveness, panic, or judgment, because the worst of human behavior is uncomfortable and destabilizing. You don't. You remain steady, composed, and aware. That calm in the face of chaos unsettles others because they're used to everyone reacting to their darkest impulses. Your lack of reaction forces them to confront their behavior without the usual social feedback loop, and that makes them nervous. When people act out, they expect responses that validate or challenge them. A shocked look, a defensive word, or even visible discomfort signals that their behavior has impact. You remove that signal. By not flinching, you deny them the control they seek through provocation. They start to wonder if you've already seen through them, if you're silently cataloging their actions, or if their attempts to intimidate or manipulate are entirely ineffective. That uncertainty is deeply unsettling. Your steadiness also gives you insight. When people reveal their worst, it tells you more than any polished facade ever could. Lies, insecurities, and hidden agendas surface naturally. You notice patterns, vulnerabilities, and motivations, all while maintaining the appearance of neutrality. That quiet observation amplifies the tension because they realize, consciously or not, that they are exposing themselves in front of someone fully aware. This approach shifts social power without words. Most people operate on reaction. They assume influence comes from visible responses. You show them that real power can exist in presence alone. By remaining unshaken, you make others question not only their actions, but also their assumptions about you. They feel watched, assessed, and understood on a level deeper than surface interaction. Not flinching doesn't make you cold. It makes you formidable. People sense it instinctively. Your calm amidst negativity signals mastery over emotion, awareness of human nature, and the ability to handle what most cannot. That makes your presence magnetic, commanding, and quietly intimidating, because it exposes a truth they can't escape. Their worst selves have no effect on you, and they know it. Number 13. You don't need to dominate conversations to lead them. Most people believe that influence is loud, fast, and visible. They think dominating a conversation, talking the most, interrupting, or pushing their agenda is the way to lead. You don't operate that way. Your power isn't in volume or force, it's in presence, timing, and awareness. When you enter a room or a discussion, people naturally orient toward you, not because you demand it, but because your focus and composure create an invisible gravity that guides attention. That subtlety is what unsettles and fascinates people. You speak only when it matters. Every word carries weight because it isn't filler, it's purpose. Unlike most, you don't feel the need to prove yourself in every sentence or fill silences with noise. Those pauses are strategic. They give others room to reveal themselves, to overcommit, or to expose gaps in their understanding. And when you do speak, people listen, not just because of what you say, but because they sense that your insight comes from observation, not ego. What makes this even more impactful is the contrast with common behavior. Most people try to lead through control, assertion, or attention-seeking, which signals insecurity beneath the surface. You lead without relying on those crutches. Your calm assessment, your selective engagement, and your quiet confidence demonstrate that influence isn't about who talks most. It's about who understands most. That dynamic creates tension for those around you because they can't predict how or when you'll act, and that unpredictability forces them to pay attention. By not dominating conversations, you also empower yourself to see the bigger picture. You notice subtleties others miss, the shifts in tone, the micro-expressions, the unspoken agendas. That awareness positions you in control of the room without overt effort. People feel it instinctively. They sense that something in you isn't ordinary, that you operate on a level beyond what can be measured by words alone. Your leadership becomes magnetic precisely because it's subtle. It's the quiet force in the room that directs attention, shapes outcomes, and commands respect, all without a single unnecessary word. That is the power of influence people can feel before they even understand it. Number 14. You move as if consequences don't scare you, but recklessness does. Most people think courage means ignoring danger or acting without fear. They mistake impulsiveness for boldness, and they rush into situations hoping to prove themselves. You don't operate that way. You move with awareness, purpose, and control. You're not fearless. You simply don't let the fear of consequences dictate your choices. That distinction is subtle but powerful, and people can feel it immediately. It unsettles them because they expect hesitation, doubt, or panic in situations that carry risk. When they don't see it, they instinctively sense that you operate on a level beyond ordinary caution. Your decisions are calculated, deliberate, and aligned with long-term vision. You weigh outcomes, anticipate responses, and understand the ripple effects of every action. That awareness creates a quiet tension around you, because people instinctively notice that you're not acting blindly or on ego. They realize that what seems effortless and confident is actually the result of precise internal control. They can't predict your moves because your strategy isn't visible, and that unpredictability makes them uneasy. Recklessness, on the other hand, is your true limit. You respect it, because impulsivity, ego-driven actions, or carelessness create chaos that even the sharpest mind struggles to manage. People notice that you avoid unnecessary risk, not out of fear, but out of understanding. That selective caution heightens your presence. It signals that you're not to be manipulated, rushed, or tested, because you act only when the timing and conditions align with your advantage. This combination of fearlessness toward consequences and respect for recklessness makes you magnetic and disorienting. People can't read you like others, and that discomfort draws attention. They sense someone who operates with mastery, foresight, and a quiet, unshakable control over both themselves and their environment. You don't need to assert dominance through words or actions. Your composure does it for you. That invisible command of presence, where risk is managed and fear is mastered, is what makes people feel something brewing around you. They know there's power in your restraint, and they can't tell where it begins or ends. Everything we've explored isn't about arrogance, showmanship, or intimidation. It's about presence, awareness, and mastery, qualities that shift the energy in any room without a single loud word. When you don't rush, when you observe reactions, when you move deliberately and control your emotional space, people notice it on a level deeper than conscious thought. They feel something brewing because your calm, calculated, and intentional way of being exposes patterns, motives, and insecurities that most can't see. You don't need to prove yourself, explain your growth, or overextend your empathy. That quiet command, rooted in patience, discernment, and subtle influence, creates a magnetic tension that draws attention, respect, and sometimes fear. This isn't about being mysterious for the sake of mystery. It's about understanding human nature, playing the long game, and letting your presence do the work that words, drama, or forced charm never could. The truth is, people are spooked not by what you say, but by what they sense. Control, clarity, and awareness that they themselves lack. And when you master that, when you exist in a way that disrupts assumptions without ever announcing it, you don't just leave an impression, you change the way people perceive and interact with the world around you. So take these insights, integrate them, and notice the shift. The quiet mastery, the deliberate patience, and the subtle authority you carry will speak louder than anything else. Your presence alone will become the catalyst for attention, intrigue, and silent respect. If this video gave you value, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Like the video to show support, and share it with anyone who needs to understand the power of presence. Stay sharp, stay aware, and keep mastering your space. Stay blessed always.